Welcome to Dadograms. They say public speaking is the number one fear of most people. And I hate to break it to you, it's a critical skill you have to succeed in life. And I'm going to tell you how to develop that skill by telling you my story in this Dadogram. I'm Jason M. Garrett, and I created Dadograms to teach my children and all of you how to succeed in life. And being able to speak in public is an absolute requirement to succeed at the highest levels in the workplace and beyond. Today I'm going to tell you how I crashed and burned the first time I spoke on stage, how I fixed it, what I learned from it, and how that skill opened doors I never could have imagined. And most important of all, how you can do it too. This isn't just about speaking on stage or at a podium or in a meeting at work. This is about learning to speak clearly under pressure, which is critical to success in school, work, and in life. The first time I ever spoke in front of others was in college. I was majoring in astronomy at the University of Kansas, and our professors got the great idea that we needed to learn to speak from behind the podium, in order to prepare for our doctoral thesis someday in the future. That was good with me. I used to have dreams of someday being a famous politician on stage speaking to millions. So I just knew. I was born to it. I was gonna crush it. So they explained the assignment. All we had to do was take a few weeks to prepare a presentation or speech and literally read it from a piece of paper to our class and our 3 professors. No memorization or anything, and the speech only had to be 5 to 7 minutes long. This was gonna be easy. They came up with a list of topics that we literally drew out of a hat. They made it kind of fun and kind of chancy. I drew mine and read it, and in all seriousness, I didn't even understand what the topic was, much less how I would present it. As my friends and I compared topics, we all realized that these were not your average normal physics problems. These were insanely hard and abstract concepts to try and figure out. Mine was something about synchrotron radiation from cosmic rays and spiral galaxies. I had never even heard of such a thing. But after a few weeks of intense study on this one bizarre topic, I had mastered it. I wrote up an outstanding paper and tweaked and modified it right up to the day of delivery. And I gotta admit, it was pretty good. It was going to be an easy A for me. Now, every time I edited it, I would read it again in my mind just to make sure it sounded right. It had to be perfect. All I had to do was lay my paper on the podium and read it aloud to the audience. It's not like it was rocket science or anything. Well, maybe the topic was, but surely the reading part wasn't. And there was no fear of speaking in public. Not in this group. The audience was only 5 of my friends because only 5 of us were majoring in astronomy. And of course, there were the 3 professors who would be grading us. So they added a little bit of pressure, but no big deal as I actually knew them because they were in fact my professors. So on the exciting day that I would present my speech, our professors asked if there would be a volunteer to go first. Without hesitation, my hand shot right up into the air. I wanted to set the pace. I wanted to show everyone how brilliant I was in front of a crowd. So they called me up in this little room. I got it behind the podium, brimming with confidence. I pulled out my paper and I started to read. Halfway through my first sentence, I knew I was in big, big trouble. I had studied my topic. I had read my paper dozens of times in my mind. My problem was that I had never said the words on that page out loud before. My mouth had never in my life said something like synchrotron radiation from a cosmic ray in a spiral galaxy. I mean, you try that, see how well that rolls off the tongue. For me, it was horrible. I stuttered and stumbled my way through my first sentence as my face flushed and my body heat started to spike. I started to sweat, and as I did all that, it only got worse. The first paragraph was total hell as I struggled to sound out complex physics terms I had only heard spoken in my mind. I sounded like an illiterate on stage trying to sound out words for the first time. Flubbing my way through it was a horrific experience that seemed to stretch on for an eternity. At one point, I looked up at my friends and they were actually pinching their legs trying not to bust out laughing. All but one. That was my friend Angie, and she was absolutely mortified. But while they each dealt with my agony in their own way, all 3 of my professors had a very specific look on their faces. It was outrage. They thought that I hadn't prepared for my presentation at all. When I sat down, the room was dead silent. I just sat there scalding. I listened to the others as they got up to speak, and you know what? I just knew they would have the exact same difficulties I did. I knew they'd fumble it like me. I was counting on it, and I was dead wrong. They spoke well, they had jokes, they were outstanding behind the podium. I was by far the biggest donkey in the group. In fact, I was the only donkey in that group. I walked out of class afterwards completely embarrassed and unsure as to whether I would ever speak on stage again. My friend Angie came up and asked me, "What happened?" she said. "I thought you prepared." So did I. I just leaned against the wall, staring up at the ceiling and shaking my head. For some reason, I could not pronounce the words on that paper. Now, I was so angry that I left the building, walked across the campus to the Naval Science Building where I was in ROTC, and I found a big empty classroom. There I stepped up to the podium, put my paper on it, and stood in front of all those empty chairs facing directly at me. I read my paper out loud again, almost shouting so a deaf person in the back row could hear me. And you know what? It still sounded like crap. My tongue just would not formulate the sounds that were required for those complex words. I thought to myself that I would never get it right. Maybe I did have a legitimate speech impediment. Admittedly, I have a thick tongue and certain words are a challenge for me. Simple words that have a TH in them, I have to deliberately speak them like other or there. But I thought that I'd overcome that hurdle a long time ago. Maybe I hadn't. Maybe I had bigger issues. So, unwilling to accept defeat, I read my paper out loud again, a third time in front of a class that day. And much to my surprise, my mouth was finally able to pronounce most of the words correctly. I guess just like they say, third time's a charm. So I stayed there and I practiced a few more times. If there was a specific word that I had trouble with, I would repeat that word 10 to 15 times until it was right, literally programming my mouth and tongue to say the words when my eyes found them on the page. In no time, I was able to read my speech out loud from beginning to end perfectly. Of course, that was too little too late. I got it right long after it counted, but ultimately, I did get it right. That day, I learned several valuable lessons I would never forget and that I want each and every one of you to hear. First, you have to practice public performance in the same conditions as the real thing until it is perfect. That gets your mouth used to saying the words. It gives you the confidence you need to stand up and perform in front of a live audience. Once you've practiced to perfection, then when you're speaking in front of an audience, your mouth can go on autopilot as it's used to saying the phrases you're reading off the page. Now, a word of warning here. If you try this in an empty room and you flush with embarrassment because your speech sounds stupid or you're misspeaking words, that's normal. Keep practicing until it's perfect. Unfortunately, most people feel too uncomfortable speaking aloud in an empty room, so they quit. So ask yourself this. Will the difficulties you have speaking in an empty room suddenly go away in front of a real live audience? They won't. Trust me. You have to do it this way, out loud, at volume, in an empty room, over and over again until it is perfect. Get past your feelings of embarrassment when you're doing this alone. You have to if you want to be good on stage, okay? Oh, and the second thing I learned that day, you rarely get judged by what you say. You're judged by how well you say it. My paper was well researched, well written. It was nearly perfect and it was easily an A, which is really hard to do in those advanced physics classes. But my presentation was so horrible that I was given a merciful C-, lowest grade in the class by 2 letter grades. I was judged solely on how I presented, not by the information I was sharing. Once I realized how important it was to speak well in public and how to rehearse it to perfection, I became obsessed with doing it better than anyone else. My next presentation in astronomy, I crushed it and got the grades based on how well I did. I kept working at speaking in public, and it has made all the difference in my life. I'm positive the lessons I've just shared with you are part of the reason I did so well in Navy flight school of all things. A lot of what we did relied on confidence and our ability to say complex and foreign words or phrases out loud, like emergency procedures that we had to say and perform under extreme stress in the air, or our aircraft limitations, systems knowledge, aviation rules, and so on. Heck, it's nerve-wracking to speak on the radios for the first time, where your words are being broadcast for hundreds of miles in all directions. So you have to rehearse what you're saying so it sounds natural and so it comes out second nature. I always practiced everything out loud until it was perfect. Despite the extreme pressure of performing in the aircraft in front of a very intimidating instructor pilot, I did extremely well. As a result, I was the #1 ranking student in my winging class in Navy Flight School. Later in my career, I got into Toastmasters, an organization to help master the art of public speaking. Again, always working to be better. There I won club, area, and division championships and competed at the state level. Next, I went on to be the lead briefer for a meeting ran by a 4-star admiral in charge of the United States Pacific Fleet. Weekly, I briefed the 4-star admiral and 5 3-star admirals and all of their top-level leadership. Not long after, I went on to be the speechwriter for that same 4-star admiral, and over the next 3 years wrote hundreds of speeches given by him to audiences around the world. On the USS Nimitz, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, I served as the safety department head, and once every 3 months, I would have to speak to a packed stadium of over 3,000 sailors about safety. If you're going to keep the attention of a bunch of 19-year-olds in a crowded stadium for 2 straight hours talking about safety, you'd better be informative and entertaining. And thankfully, I was. You'd be surprised how good it feels to inspire a crowd of that size. You can feel the power in their laughter and their focused attention in the hushed anticipation of what it is you're teaching them. I love speaking in front of an audience, but it did not start out that way at all. I've had to work hard to have the confidence I've got now. After that terrible disaster on stage in college, I could have let it beat me. I could have walked away like so many others do, embarrassed and defeated. But that's not what winners do. That's not what you're going to do. I made a choice. I learned, I practiced, and I got better. I learned how to command a room, how to win over a crowd, how to take complex ideas and help others understand them. And I did it in the same way you can, by grinding through the awkward reps, out loud, alone, in an empty room, until the words come out clear, clean, and right. You don't have to be perfect to get started. You just have to start. Find a mirror, find an empty room, build a fake stage if you need to. Speak your words out loud again and again until it feels easy. That's how confidence is built. That's how public speaking goes from terrifying to second nature. And if you do all that, if you put in the work most people are too embarrassed to do, you'll be the one that they are listening to. You'll be the one they remember, because strong communication is invaluable. It makes everything else in your life more impacting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still listening, subscribe to this channel and hit that thumbs up button and all that cool stuff. Until next time, don't run from the fear of speaking in public. Lean into it. Rehearse until it's second nature. Speak with purpose and watch the doors open up before you.